What's going on, San Antonio? What's going on, South Texas? My name is Mike Jimenez, and this is the Alamo City Sportscast coming at you from San Antonio, Texas. Actually, I'm in West Bexar County. What's going on? Hope everyone had a fantastic weekend. And chances are, if you are a Dallas Cowboy fan, you probably did not have a good weekend because what an ass kicking that was last night on Sunday Night Football. Well, actually, it wasn't Sunday Night Football. It was, 3:25 start. Cowboys lost 31-10. The whole world watched. And the fact of the matter is that Cowboy fans have reason to be concerned. Okay, this has been a good year for the Cowboys, but they've been good before. Are you worried right now as a Cowboy fan as to what this team is able to do in the postseason? So we're going to talk about the Cowboys. We're going to get into the Spurs because the Spurs finally snapped that 18-game losing streak and then go on to lose by almost 40 points. What the hell is going on there? How active should the Spurs be in the trade market? Speaking of the NBA, Draymond Green's suspension is coming into focus. He was suspended indefinitely, but what the hell does that mean, right? Does that mean 5 games, 25 games, somewhere in the middle, the full season? We're now getting reports right now as to what that actually is going to mean for Draymond Green and the Golden State Warriors. So we'll get into that. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can take part in the show by leaving a comment or 5 or 10 on our chat line here on YouTube. And if you're listening later on in the day, because again, we're available on Spotify, we're available on Apple Play, on iHeart app, and all of those major podcast platforms, you can be part of the show later on as well. I'm on Twitter at MJ Acquired Taste. Joe Garcia typically produces the show, but he's been out this past month because of an issue that he has at work. New job, training. He's working at this time. But beginning at the start of the year, we're going to have some fun things going on. We might expand the network. We're going to be talking about that this week to find out exactly what it is we're going to do with this network as we go on. We started this over the summer about 5 or 6 months ago. And the idea was for this network to help bridge the gap between local sports talk radio here in San Antonio, whether it be Ticket 760 or San Antonio Sports Star, how they don't have anything going on between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. There's got to be some local sports talk going on, so why not fill in the gaps? That is what we're trying to do over here. Personal issues kind of got in the way, and I was unable to kind of go full force in the summer and fall, but now that I'm back talking sports, pop culture, nostalgia, we're trying to see what the next step is going to be. Now, speaking of our network, you can join Brandon Medina and Joe Garcia because they're going to have an event going on Thursday Night Football. This Thursday, you can go check out the Fantasy Gods Watch Party over at Mad Pecker Brewery, which is on 6025 Tezel Road. Mad Pecker Brewery, fantastic place if you want to go get some locally brewed beer. If you want to get pizza, burgers, wings, they've got it all over there. This is at 6025 Tezel Road, rather. So basically, Tezel and Culebra area, pretty close to there. So if you're in the Alamo Ranch area, about 2 miles inside the loop, you go to Culebra, make your way over to Tezel, and boom, you've got it there, Mad Pecker Brewery. It's going to be a pretty good game there because for all intents and purposes, the Thursday night game is going to be a playoff game of sorts because the Rams, the Saints, both tied with the 7-7 record, both looking for the last wild card berth. The Saints have a chance of winning the NFC South. And for all intents and purposes, the winner of this game will more than likely make the playoffs. This game is playing in LA. LA favored by 4.5 points. And it's a big, big game. So again, the watch party this Thursday for the Fantasy Gods to celebrate this season. Brandon Medina, Joe Garcia will be out there. Lots to get into today. Of course, as I said, Cowboys talk, Spurs talk, all of that. But as Tim Gonzalez reaches out to me right now on our YouTube chat, says, "What's going on, Jimenez? Congratulations on your daughter graduating from college." I got to tell you, I did not know how I was going to react to all of that. I'm a bit of a crier, okay? I am that guy. I am the kind of guy who gets emotional when it comes to certain things, when it comes to being a dad or being a husband or whatever the case may be. And my baby girl, just 20 years old, man. She just turned 20 in July, got her bachelor's in mass communications. And I drove out there to Baton Rouge to go watch her walk the stage. We had about 20 family members there. My ex-wife was there. My first ex-wife was there. And, that's the mom. And we all got along and got along very well with the mom's boyfriend. I love the guy. He's a great guy. And we went out there and just celebrated my daughter, Gabby, walking the stage. And we're in this auditorium. And if you don't know the auditorium, LSU is the site of the movie Pitch Perfect. So the Barton Bellas and the movie Pitch Perfect, that was all filmed at LSU. And so, wherever you see her doing the cups routine, Anna Kendrick doing the cups routine, that's the same stage where my daughter walked the stage for college graduation. That's at the Union Center, the student union there at LSU. But I didn't know what it was going to be like because this is my first daughter to graduate in that manner. I have a younger daughter who's in middle school. But, man, Gabby walks the stage, and she's wearing purple. Summa cum laude, never got a B, all A's the entire time at LSU. And instead of crying, I clasped my hands together like I was in prayer, and I just started smiling. My ex-wife noticed that. She told me later on, she was like, I saw you smile. I saw how you smiled. And I was like, well, that's our baby. That's our baby. But she graduated, walked the stage. I'm going to be going back to Baton Rouge next week because I need to move her into her new apartment, and I'm going to get her college gift. I'm going to get her a car. So I've decided that I'm going to buy her a brand new car, brand new beginnings. She has a brand new career working for The Advocate, which is Baton Rouge's version of the San Antonio Express News. She's a crime reporter over there. Gabby, congratulations, girl. I love you. You did Daddy proud, man. You did Daddy proud, and you make me look like a good dad. I'm a good dad, but you make me look like a great dad. But all of that is the effort that she did. David Otwater reaches out to us. I'll probably mispronounce your name now that I realize it. He says that he's pissed about the Cowboys and the Spurs. He says Jacob reaching out and saying the Spurs got curb stomped as well. That's putting it mildly. Let's talk about the Cowboys first, right? The Cowboys lost 31-10. It was the 325 game. If you were watching football, you were watching that game because I believe that was the only 325 action going on in the NFL yesterday. There were games going on Saturday, so not as many games on Sunday. But you take a look at what's going on. Cowboy fans, on a scale of 1 through 10, reach out to me, by the way, on our YouTube stream. How worried are you about the Dallas Cowboys now? Now, you might look at it and think to yourself, well, what do you mean, Jimenez? The Dallas Cowboys are a pretty good team. They're 10-4, one of the best records in the NFL. But the weird thing about it is that they're 10-4, but they're 7-0 at home. What do they have, like a 12, 13-game winning streak at home? 7-0 at home, undefeated, but a losing record, 3-4 on the road. And the only wins they have are teams like the Carolina Panthers and the New York Giants. They only beat bad teams on the road, but they don't beat good teams on the road. They've lost to Buffalo on the road. They lost to San Francisco. They lost to Philadelphia. And if the Cowboys don't win the NFC East, they're going to have to go on the road and win 3 playoff games in a row on the road. First would be more than likely against the NFC South champion, whether it be the Saints or the Buccaneers. They'd have to go do that. And chances are they'd be favored. And I would say that probably 7 times out of 10, they win that game against the NFC South champion. All right? I see that happening. But then second round, what? They have to play San Francisco. And if they get by San Francisco, they then have to get by Philadelphia at Lincoln Financial Field, or they have to get by Detroit. Dude, they need to win the NFC East. And this is the thing. The Cowboys won a lot of easy games. And the Eagles, again, lost to the Cowboys last week. The Eagles are looking not as strong as they used to be. But the fact of the matter is that the Eagles went through murderer's row. They beat Kansas City. They beat Buffalo. They played San Francisco. They played the Cowboys twice. Now the Eagles' schedule is getting a little bit easier, and the Cowboys' schedule is getting harder because the next game for the Cowboys is on the road against the Miami Dolphins, and the Dolphins are trying to win the AFC East, and they are a very good team with a dynamic offense. Tonight, Monday Night Football, the Philadelphia Eagles are in action, and the Eagles are trying to get back ahead of the Cowboys, and if the Eagles win this game, it is over. It is over. Because if the Eagles win this game, they'll go up a game, and chances are we'll have the tiebreaker over the Cowboys. And who do the Eagles have to end the season? The Giants twice and the Washington Commanders. And in order for the Cowboys to win this division, they would have to hope that the Giants win one of those games. The Eagles playing the Seahawks Monday Night Football at 7:15. Eagles favored by 3.5 points. Seahawks need this game if they have any chance of making the playoffs. They need this game. David reached out to us and saying, Dolphins are going to stomp us next week. We'll have a conversation about that. Jacob says, when you look up exposed in the dictionary, there should be a pic of the Cowboys. So what exactly did the Bills expose? They exposed yesterday that the Cowboys may not have as good of a run defense as a lot of fans would like to think. They exposed the fact that the Cowboys have difficulty adjusting on the road. For some reason, this team is just elite at home. The Cowboys are probably the second or third best team in all of the NFL when playing at home. But when they're on the road, completely different team. They are a 500 mediocre team, less than 500. They're 3-4. They're 3-4 when they're playing on the road. And if I had told you before the game started that Josh Allen would play the whole game and have only 7 completions the whole game, and that Josh Allen would only throw for 94 yards, everyone would have thought, man, Cowboys going to win this game by 30. They're going to win this game running away. But no, Josh Allen, just 7 for 15, less than 50% accuracy, fewer than 100 yards thrown. The Bills told Josh Allen, we got this. We don't need you today. The Cowboys got punched in the face repeatedly, and the name was James Cook. Left fist was named James Cook. Right fist was named James Cook because these stats are ridiculous. James Cook, 179 yards rushing on 25 carries, averaged 7.2 yards per carry. He also had 2 receptions for 42 yards, had a touchdown on the ground, had a touchdown as a receiver. And Ty Johnson even had 54 yards on 9 rush attempts. Josh Allen rushed for 24. Allen threw for a touchdown, ran in a touchdown as well. It was basically James Cook to the left, James Cook to the right, James Cook up the middle. That is it. That is all that the Buffalo Bills did. And in the process, Zach Martin gets hurt. Now, he's not going to be out for the year or anything like that. It seems like it's a minor injury, but he was knocked out of the game. And so many miscues by the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cowboys couldn't get anything done offensively. Dak Prescott threw for only 134 yards. Tony Pollard rushed for only 52 yards. CeeDee Lamb, just 53 yards receiving. I mean, Dak Prescott, 0 touchdowns thrown. CD did have a rushing attempt for a touchdown, but it was an ass kicking. It was an absolute ass kicking. And as David reaches out and says, that was a no-name running back. James Cook is kind of a no-name, right? When you think about great running backs, you don't think, oh, you know what, James Cook is that guy, right? But James Cook, fewer than 1,000 yards rushing on the season. But if you look back in time of what he's done, I mean, against Kansas City, James Cook had 58 yards rushing. Against Philadelphia, he had 43 yards rushing. Against the Jets, he had 73 yards. But against the Cowboys, with Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence and all of those guys, he had 179 yards rushing. He's a decent back, but my goodness, this Buffalo Bills team is getting good at the right time. If the season ended right now, the Bills wouldn't even be in the playoffs. They're 8-6 and are on the outside looking in, along with the Texans at 8-6, trying to fight their way into the playoffs. But the thing is that chances are they'll be able to control their destiny to get in. But Josh Allen is playing so much better. Josh Allen is playing at a very elite level. Now, what this game did for the Cowboys was a couple of things. It is going to knock them out of first place. Chances are there's a good chance the Eagles win tonight. Eagles win tonight. Eagles are going to more than likely win the division. It'd be like a 90% chance of them winning the division or whatever the case may be. But the accolades also went away because Caesar Sportsbook has updated who they believe is going to win the MVP, and it is no longer Dak Prescott. Right now, Dak Prescott is basically tied for second with Lamar Jackson at number one. According to Caesar Sportsbook, that honor belongs to, with 3 weeks to go in the season, that honor belongs to Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers. And I mentioned this about 2 or 3 weeks ago on Twitter, and people thought I was an idiot when I said this. I said Dak Prescott is going to need to win the division in order to win the MVP, because you go back in time, 13 of the last 14 MVPs came from the division winner. The one that wasn't was Adrian Peterson. He needs to win the division. And right now, if you look at it, Brock Purdy being number one and number two, Lamar Jackson, what do they have in common? The best records in their respective conferences. That's how it goes. So the Cowboys are in danger right now of having to go on the road 3 times. And why are they such a different team on the road? I don't get it, man. I absolutely don't get it. Chris Gonzalez reaches out and says, Cook did not get touched a lot of times after he ran for like 8 yards. They were doing something to get Micah Parsons off of his game. Was watching, might have been SportsCenter or something on ESPN, where they were showing what they were doing, how they were faking out Micah Parsons and making Micah Parsons essentially get swallowed up by all the bodies in the line. It was like they were doing stunt moves. They were dragging over guards and tackles, and they were making all of this movement on the line, and it made Micah Parsons kind of hesitate. And every time he hesitated, the play just went right by him. And it was almost like they were throwing him pitches like fastball, curveball, slider, fastball, curveball, slider. And Micah Parsons was not used to it. And Micah Parsons was not used to the fact that they were running at him, not away from him. And Parsons may have lost any possibility of winning Defensive Player of the Year yesterday because they were not afraid of him. They actually took him out of the game. Drew Show reaches out and says, man, I heard you knock something off the table. That's right, man. I'm at home. Now, hopefully, I'm going to get my studio going here in the next 2 or 3 weeks or so. I think that when the year starts, I'll be doing it at Joe's studio and then have it over here. It's going to be easier for me to run my business and do this at the same time. We'll be doing that. Now, if you see my son walking back and forth, it is Christmas holidays, right? So he is not in school right now. Justin is my boy. He's with special needs. He has Down syndrome. He loves going to SeaWorld, and we're going to go do SeaWorld after today's show. So I'm excited about that. But Drew, I did see that you gave a tip. I will get back to your Spurs talk in a minute, but let's talk a little bit more about the Cowboys, because the Cowboys next have the Miami Dolphins. On the road, playing in grass. The Miami Dolphins are a very good team. And part of me thinks that the Cowboys can be, if you want to put a positive spin to them losing, it's the fact that they can get that chip on their shoulder again. It's the fact that they can look back and go, you know what, we don't want to have that taste again. The Cowboys, though, before kickoff, clinched a playoff berth because Atlanta lost, and somehow that magically gave the Cowboys a playoff berth. I know Rudy J from San Antonio Sports Star was on social media yesterday saying that the Cowboys punted that game away, that they didn't care because they had won all these games in a row and they just needed to recharge. I get that, but at the same time, recharging and losing these games means that they're going to have to go on the road for the playoffs, but I don't think that they can win 3 in a row, man. I don't think they can. And Miami has something to play for. So imagine if the Cowboys go out to Miami and lose a second straight game. At that point, the doubt sets in, right? At that point, there's got to be doubt on Cowboy fans' minds when it comes to things. Now, next week, that game is going to be played again in Miami at 3:25 start. Miami favored by 1.5. Great stat that I saw on ESPN Sunday morning. Whoever that blonde hottie is that talks about betting, oh my God, she's amazingly hot. But whoever that girl is, she mentioned the fact that the Cowboys, when they are underdogs, lose. I think she said something to the effect of that the Cowboys, the Cowboys right now, going into the last game, were 10-3. I think she said that something to the effect of they're 10-0 when just winning the game when they're favored, but when they're favored to lose, when they're the actual underdog, they've lost every single time. Yesterday they played at Buffalo. They were favored to lose. They lost. They were favored to lose in San Francisco. They lost. They were favored to lose in Philadelphia. They lost. Not so much a cover the spread type of deal, but when the Cowboys, according to Vegas, are favored to lose, even if it's by 1 point, they typically lose. It's a weird stat when it comes to betting and when it comes to the Cowboys. Cowboys right now 3-4 on the road. What is going on? 7-0 at home, 3-4 on the road. I would say this, man, if the Cowboys were somehow magically the 1 seed, they would probably make the Super Bowl. There's something about the magic going on at Jerry World when it comes to the Cowboys. But without that home field advantage, they're just another team, man, that gets rolled. Just another team. Again, we're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Twitter as well. I do have a Twitter poll at MJ Acquire Taste asking the question, the Cowboys, can they win 3 games on the road and make their way to the Super Bowl, or do they need home field advantage of some sort? 82 people have voted in the last hour. 79% say the Cowboys need home field. Several comments coming in. Sir LJ says the Cowboys better not dip past the 5 seed. Well, let's see. If they're the 5 seed, they'll have to play either the Saints or the Bucks more than likely. They'll get past both of those teams. The Saints, though, played very well. They beat the Giants yesterday, back at 500. Every time they sacked the Giants quarterback, the Italian sensation that he is, they'd give the hand gesture. Joshua reaches out to us and says the real question for Cowboy fans is, can the Cowboys go on the road and even have a competitive game? They're 3-4 in away games with a -4 in point differential in away games. Cowboys suck anyway in road games. Mike reaches out and says, and apparently they can't play on real grass either. Now, yesterday, though, that was an outdoor game played on turf. And if I'm not mistaken, the Cowboys had won like 18, 20 games in a row on turf. It was an outdoor game, but it was on turf. Others reaching out saying 0. Pedro reaches out and says the probability of home field is out of reach if the Eagles win tonight. If that's the case, rest up and wait for playoffs and mitigate injuries. It's a very good point. If the Cowboys see that, it's not going to happen, that they're not going to catch the Eagles, just rest your guys, man. Just rest them. Look at the playoff standings right now. Cowboys right now at 10-4. If the playoffs were to start right now, the Philadelphia Eagles would be the NFC East champion, but it would be the San Francisco 49ers with the 1 spot and the bye in the playoffs. They looked good yesterday. They always look good. I mean, they had that 3-game stretch where they looked like trash, but aside from that, they've been on fire. If the season ended right now, the Rams would be on the road playing the Eagles in the first round of the playoffs. You would have a Vikings-Lions matchup and the Cowboys on the road against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In the AFC, Baltimore would have the bye. Miami would host Indianapolis. Kansas City would host the Bengals. And Jacksonville would host Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns. But look at these teams that are fighting for spots. The Texans and the Buffalo Bills at 8-6, right on the heels there. Texans have a game against Indy, so Texans can control their destiny. Just win out, baby. The Saints right now are 7-7. Same record as Minnesota and the Rams for the last 2 spots in the playoffs. Seattle trying to match them at 7-7 tonight against the Eagles. Cowboys, man, it's just so bizarre, man, that team. So bizarre how they can go from being the second or third best team in all the NFL at home to just simply being a below average team on the road. And what does that say about the mental fortitude, the preparedness that they have as a team? It just tells you that for some reason, when they're on the road, they're just not in it together. There's just something off. The offense is off. The defense is off. The routes are wrong. The offensive line cannot hold their ground as well as they do. It's just so weird. Because if they had played this game in Dallas, I kind of think the Cowboys would have won. They play on the road, and suddenly James Cook is like a all-pro out there. But let's go ahead and talk about more sports topics. Spurs. Drew Show reaches out to us. Nice little $5 tip. I appreciate it. He goes, hand motions, big guy. You don't want any technical difficulties. Why isn't anybody, journos, talking about Pop's team quitting on him? You know, I have that conversation a lot with former sports journalists here in town. I was in the media from 96 to 2005. I got in around 2014 again, and then I did sports talk radio for 2 or 3 years. And there is a fear of Pop in the front office. Just what it is. You know, Pop pisses off a lot of people because of his talks about politics. And I don't think a lot of his politics are wrong. I think a lot of what he says is very valid. And the fact of the matter is that he's a veteran. He let him speak his mind if he wants to. I don't care. But the thing is that you can't have it one way and not the other. You know, he can say all the things about Constitution and freedom of this and freedom of that and what we need to do. Fact of the matter is that I don't believe that the Spurs organization really does believe in free speech when it comes to that team. And I think that the journalists, whether they be WAI, Ken's, KSAT, Express News, and whatnot, are fearful of losing access to the team. And that sucks that it got to that. And what allowed that to happen was the fact that the Spurs were winning 99, 03, 05, 07, 14, and making the finals in 13. When you win, as a journalist, you'll take what you can get. But if you try to put the genie back in the bottle, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Brian Wright would have been fired by now. Greg Popovich would have been forced to retire by now. And it hasn't happened because there's no pressure to. I don't see anybody on sports talk radio. I don't see anybody on TV or in print or whatever the case would be really going after these guys and ask the question, what the hell is going on with this team? Because Spurs fans want to know at this point. And I was banging on this drum 2 years ago, and people thought I was a complete asshole, a complete idiot. I was on sports talk radio going, there's something wrong going on within the Spurs organization. Why doesn't anybody see it? And then what ends up happening is that the Spurs win the lottery magically, and we're like, okay, we're going to give Pop in the front office more time to figure things out. Because we saw him, what he was able to do with Tim Duncan, what he was able to do with generational talent. We're going to give Pop benefit of the doubt. And what did Pop go on and do? Pop decided that Victor Wembanyama was not going to be his priority, that Jeremy Sohan was going to be. And where did that get you? Sohan's broken, man. I mean, you say about the team quitting. The team, I don't want to say that they quit. I only caught part of the game because, I was watching football and whatnot. But if you look at the Spurs, they're coming off an emotional victory where they beat LeBron and the Lakers on Friday. And you thought to yourself, okay, maybe they can start to turn things around a little bit. But then they give up 146 points at home to the Pelicans. 146 points. And, Brandon Ingram goes off for 26. CJ McCollum for 29. But let's focus on the Spurs. Why is Keldon Johnson taking 18 shots? Why is he taking 18 shots? I don't understand. Keldon Johnson took 18 shots. Mike Taylor astutely pointed this out from the Mike Taylor Show, his podcast, astutely pointed this out, that he had 18 attempts. Wemby only had 13. Vassell had 13. Wemby and Vassell are the shooters on this team. Why is Keldon Johnson taking 18 shots, especially if he only knocked down 6 and he missed all 4 3-pointers? Why is he shooting so much? It's so bizarre looking at this box score here. The only one that seems to be doing a little bit better and progressing per game right now is Victor Wembanyama and Malachi Branham. Malachi Branham, last 5 games that he's been starting, averaging 13 points per game, shooting 37% from 3, shooting 54% from the field, doing a very good job out there. Malachi Branham is showing that he might actually be something that is worth holding on to with this team. But Jeremy Sohan, my goodness, man, he has been broken by this team. Yesterday, 5 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds in 25 minutes. Jeremy Sohan, in the last, remember about 2 weeks ago, he had a game where he broke out for 33 points? Dude, it's been a long time since then, man. Long time since then, because I'm looking at his stats right now for what he's done in the last 5 games. Basura, man. Just straight up trash. His point totals last 5 games, 4, 7, 5, 11, 5. That's an average of like 7. His assists, 4, 2, 5, 2, 4. So not getting a lot of assists. Rebounds, 3, 6, 8, 8, 3. Okay, he's getting some boards. 2 blocks and only 3 steals in 5 games. When it comes to 3-point shooting, he's back down to 33% of the year. Remember? Everyone giving me shit going, hey, man, he's now a 3-point threat. He's shooting 43%. What did I say? He's going to end the season around 33. And where is he at right now? He's at 33%. Told you, baby. Told you. He is what he is. He's just a dude, man. He's just a dude. Just noticed that I got a lot of comments here that I need to check in on here. Haiti reaches out and says, yes, Sohan looks broken. Feel bad for him. I mean, he has regressed even at the power forward position. And I have a hard time faulting Sohan for this. John Dyer, who's a follower of this podcast, you know, he's part of Spurs Twitter, asked the question on Twitter the other day, why am I not taking a victory lap right now about Jeremy Sohan and his struggles? Because he thinks that I get off to Sohan failing. I'm not doing a victory lap because I don't think that this year is on him. I think this year's on Pop. Pop broke him. That whole experiment at point guard was just ridiculous. And, man, I see all the people on Twitter right now, Spurs Twitter, who are like, positionless basketball. You know, we have Wemby at the 5 and have 4 shooters out there, and it's going to be perfectly fine. No, dude. No. I like point guards. And Sohan wasn't going to be that guy. I mean, the hubris, the arrogance to think that you can make somebody a point guard who has never been a point guard in their entire life, that somehow somebody who didn't play point guard in elementary or high school or college or in their first year in the pros was suddenly going to be able to just pick it up. Just pick it up. You'll figure it out. We'll pick it up. Might have been the most arrogant thing. No. The most arrogant thing that Pop has ever done was grab the microphone and tell Spurs fans not to boo. But when it comes to Jeremy Sohan, the fact that he went out there and decided that, you know what, instead of focusing on Victor Wembanyama and his development, we're going to put Sohan at point. We're going to have him bring the ball up. Absolutely stupid. I'm done. I'm absolutely done. Drew reaches out and says, defense is 100% motivation, 100% effort. When they don't play defense, then the coach is not getting through the players. Stop box score commentary. Well, first of all, the box score says a lot. It doesn't matter if it's football, baseball, or basketball. And the box score says a lot. But what you're alluding to, Drew, is something that I do pick up on, which is body language. I was at the Spurs game Wednesday night when they lost to the Lakers without LeBron James. And the body language you see out there of Sohan is confusion. He's not going to spots with purpose. He's looking around. And it's not head on a swivel. It looks like he's lost. And you see other players out there that have just bad form when it comes to walking off the court during a timeout, or they just feel, it just looks like they've given up. And that is part coaching, because I'm sure these players don't want to give up. I'm sure they want to win games, but they're not being put in position to win these games. And I don't think they're being coached up. Chip Anglin being with Oklahoma City Thunder might be one of the biggest developments that the Spurs have had, that when we look back in time and go, why aren't the Spurs as good as they should be? Probably because Chip left. Why did Chip leave? How is it that we don't have that conversation as to why Chip Anglin left? And it was never created to be by the local media that big of a deal. It's like, oh, well, longtime Spurs assistant coach, the shot doctor, has gone off to go to Oklahoma City. Have we figured out why? Was it a money thing? Was it a conflict thing? Did he get a raise in stature over there, or is he just doing the same thing? Or was it just a lateral move to Oklahoma City just because? Because it's not like Oklahoma City is a destination city, right? He wasn't going to a bigger market. He was going to another small market team. Did he just get tired of being here? And the Spurs right now are in a position where you could be half glass full, half glass empty when it comes to them. The glass empty is, wow, this is the shittiest season we've ever had as a team. The half glass full is, well, we've got a lot of draft capital. As of right now, the Spurs are on track to have 2 first-round draft picks. If you go onto the website, tankathon.com, they'll tell you where the Spurs are right now, because they have Toronto's pick, which is top 6 protected. And if the season ended right now, the Spurs would be picking at number 2 and number 9 if all things went to form with the lottery. But do we trust the Spurs drafting the right guy? So much has been made in the last couple of weeks about how the Spurs passed on Tyrese Halliburton and got Devin Vassell instead. Now, at the time, if I'm not mistaken, we had DeJounte Murray, so there wasn't necessarily a need for Tyrese Halliburton, but that stings a little bit, right? That stings when we pick a player that, even if they're decent or borderline good, you see that the next player after them is a superstar. And you can go back in time with a lot of drafts when it comes to this, because no draft is going to be perfect, and there's always diamonds in the rough. But I go back to some of these drafts, right? So let's go back the last 5 years. And this was not going to be a topic of conversation, but let's have this conversation right now. The Spurs in 2020 picked Devin Vassell at number 11. If they redrafted that whole draft, Devin Vassell would probably go in the top 7. Anthony Edwards would go above him. LaMelo Ball would go ahead of him. Tyrese Halliburton would go ahead of him. So the Spurs got probably the 6th or 7th best player in the draft, and they got him at number 11. So in my mind, that's a successful draft, even though a superstar came right after where we picked, right? You go to 2011, the Spurs go off and draft Joshua Primo. Joshua Primo no longer on the team because of accusations of misconduct, dropping the towel and all that stuff. Behind him, you had Alperen Sengun, who could have been picked. And Sengun was somebody that I was a very, very, very big fan of. 2022, we're talking about the Sohan draft. Spurs also got Malachi Branham and Blake Wesley in that draft. I mean, who else were you gonna get? I mean, AJ Griffin, Tari Eason. I mean, Walker Kessler was a name out there. But the fact of the matter is that when you look at that particular draft, there was nobody that the Spurs could have gotten that would have been much better than what Sohan was going to bring you anyway. Let's do one last draft, 2019. 2019 was the year that we got Luka Samanic. It's also the year we got Keldon Johnson. But if you look at some of the players that were behind him, there were second rounders that did better than a lot of the first rounders. You know, you had Nick Claxton, KZ Okpala, Carson Edwards. But the only player that was, Brandon Clark, could have been a guy. Lots of people reaching out right now. David reached out and saying, hearing the Spurs may get Bol to pair with Victor. I've heard of that. I don't think it's going to be a deal. I don't think it's going to happen. But I think that's more of a curiosity factor than anything else. Jose Balados, which is out. So what on, Jose? Do you have any interest in any of these Quickly rumors? So Quickly, okay, so there's a lot of rumors going on right now that Quickly is going to be available. He's a point guard, Emmanuel Quickly. He's a good player. He's a shoot-first point guard. So part of me says I'm leaning more towards no. But if it was to happen, I would get excited about it because Quickly is somebody right now averaging 15 points per game, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. If you look at the last 5 games, the guy likes to fire off shots. And he's a streaky guy. And he is somebody that this year, I'm looking at his stats right now, this year is going off and averaging 14.6 points per game. He averaged 15 last year. 3-point accuracy, 37% shooted the last 2 years. 37% for his career. So he can knock down threes. You can convince me in doing so, but he's not the kind of guy that's going to go off and get you 8 or 9 or 10 assists per game. And I guess it's one of those things where you have to ask yourself the question, what do you expect from that particular position? I guess more than likely he's more of a 2 than a 1. But he's been around for 4 seasons, 24 years old. He's not a bad player, man. He's not a bad player at all. I would be excited about it, but the Knicks, what would you have to give up for him? And those rumors seem to be relatively legit. Out of all the rumors that I've seen, the Bol one, I don't think is anything. But when it comes to Emmanuel Quickly, that one I do believe has some legs. Drew reaches out and says part of the win against Lakers was that Sohan was back to being a pest against LeBron. Sohan, Keldon, Vassell, and even Collins can't be judged with the piss poor job Pop is doing. Goes on to say that ESPN was mocking Pop and the 3 quarters. Everybody is point and laughing at the Spurs. Every training room, every front office. I guess what you're trying to say, Drew, is, and there's some validity to all this, is that the game has passed Pop by. Which is weird because if you look at the evolution of the Spurs from when they won their first title in 99 to them going off and getting those titles in 03 and 05, those were brutal finals, man. Those were finals in which the Spurs were winning games, 91 to 77. And then you had the beautiful game of 2014 and how well they played in 2013, where they ran up and down the court and they were getting all this movement. And Pop was able to evolve with that. After 2014, what did you have? You had the evolution of the 3-point shot and these teams going out there and just firing 3 after 3 after 3. And I'm thinking about the Golden State Warriors. And I don't think Pop evolved to that. Because Steve Kerr and Mark Jackson before him all looked at the numbers like what's that movie, Moneyball? They looked at the numbers and they said, it's about effective field goal shooting. It's about how many points can you get off of 100 shots, right? So if you shoot 50% on 100 shots and they're all 2-pointers, you're going to have 100 points, right? 50 buckets times 2 is 100, right? But if you are shooting 3-pointers and you shoot 100 of them and you make 40, well, you made 120 points off of those 100 shots. So they were looking at that and going, we need to change the game and make it so that we're 3-point heavy and have good accuracy at three-point shooting, because the effective field goal shooting would suggest that that's the way to get more points, and that's accurate. But then the Spurs and Pop decided that three-point shooting was not going to be what they do. They drafted Jeremy Sohan, who was a 26% three-point shooter in college. They got Joshua Primo, who couldn't shoot threes in college either. They got all these players who could knock them down. And if you want to know why the Spurs struggle so much, it's because we don't have very many reliable three-point shooters. I think Victor Wembanyama will eventually become one. He's got the form. He's got the arc. I just think that he needs to give him a little bit more patience when it comes to it. Keldon is streaky when it comes to it. I think Devin Vassell is probably the most reliable three-point shooter, and even he is streaky from time to time. But the mocking of Pop by ESPN and by all of these outlets is because they believe that he has actually not evolved anymore, that he's stopped evolving, that he's trying to round peg a square hole right now, and it's just not working. It's just not working. And this is a throwaway season, and it sucks, because I was very, very, very excited about that. And you know that it's one of those things where Wemby doesn't have to stay. Everyone's under the impression that Wemby's going to be here forever. Wemby can be gone in 3 more seasons. There's no NFL, I'm going to go ahead and just franchise tag this guy for another 1 season and then another 1 season, because keep franchise tagging him. That doesn't work in the NBA. In 3 years, if Victor Wembanyama wants to go to Chicago, wants to go to Miami, New York, or LA, he's free to do so. So the fact that the Spurs would piss away his first season pisses me off. Lots of comments coming in right now. Just try to sort through them. Josh Jimenez says, what about building a team around, let me just read this. It's easier if I read it this way. What about building a team around youth and then going to trade the second and first round picks in the draft? Brian Wright is horrible and needs to get fired. He knows about losing. He only knows about losing. I don't understand about the whole youth movement. I mean, is Pop the guy for a youth movement? Last I remember, okay, the lore of the Spurs lore of yesteryear was he didn't like Tony Parker. He didn't want to draft Tony Parker. And when he had Tony Parker, didn't want to play him. The lore of Greg Popovich was he didn't want to play Manu. He didn't understand Manu. It's almost as though the stories that we hear after the fact is he wanted veterans and he didn't like the young guys. And now we're to believe that at age 74, by the way, Pop turns 75 next month, we're now to believe that suddenly he has an affinity for young players. Why? Why? I've never understood that. And I'm not a big fan of the direction of the team right now, because you need to have veteran leadership. The Spurs going off right now and having a 4-20 record, or whatever they are right now, 4-21, whatever it is that the Spurs are right now, they're not going to get, there's no benefit to that. You see all these sports fans going, they're going to learn from this. They're going to learn from this. That is the biggest bullshit I have heard about the Spurs season this year, is that they're going to learn from losing. Losing creates a losing culture, okay? It doesn't matter what you do for a living. If you are a teacher and you hang around other teachers who are bad at what they do in a school that doesn't have leadership, you're not going to become a better teacher because you were around those people. No, you actually learn from better people. It doesn't matter in what respect it is. I'm in finance. I hung around better financial people who were more successful than me to learn from them. I learned from people's successes. I didn't learn from constantly failing. And that's where the Spurs are right now. They're constantly failing. And I understand the tank process. I understand to go get your one guy. I don't think the Spurs are tanking right now. I just think the Spurs, as they stand right now, as a team, as a coaching unit, just simply suck. Drew reaches out and says, Pop is a con man. He knows it. That's why he's so defensive to the point that he's being abusive. I wish that Dan Kick used his power at the time to run him out of town like Bob Hill. Dude, I'm thinking back to Bill Belichick of the New England Patriots, who is on the hot seat right now. And he one time said, I'm a good coach of great players. And we're seeing that with Pop. You don't give Pop great players. It just ain't it, man. Just ain't it. Just ain't it. Let's go ahead and change this topic for a little bit. Draymond Green. That indefinite suspension is looking to be maybe just 3 to 4 weeks at this point. Shams Charania of The Athletic is reporting today that Draymond Green has entered a counseling program and that it's very possible that he can come back next month rather. So the chances are Draymond Green will miss somewhere between 8 and 11 games. He'll be sidelined for 3 weeks, according to sources telling The Athletic. You know, I'm okay with that. The last suspension he had was 5 games. He cold-cocked Yusuf Nurkic the other day. And I thought to myself that I would be happy with a 10-game suspension. Essentially, if it turns out to be somewhere between 8 and 11 games, and he was forced into therapy, and he was forced to maintain a certain counseling regimen, I think that the NBA did their job. And I think that's the most that you can do. But the fact of the matter is that the players' union and the team and all that went up and said that this needed to be done at this point. My thing about it is that why is it we talk about the fact that Pop doesn't get any criticism. Why doesn't Steve Kerr get criticism for what he allowed Draymond Green to do with his team? People like Steve Kerr. You know why? Because he's a good-looking guy. You know why? It's because he's in his 50s or so and has a baby face. That's why he's allowed to get away with all shit. And Steve Kerr is responsible for Draymond Green's actions as Draymond Green is. Steve Kerr always backed up Draymond, always stood by him and said, oh, he's just not understood. I mean, even when Draymond Green attacked one of his own teammates, Kerr did nothing about it. Got rid of the teammate instead. Josh Jimenez, no relation, saying the Spurs are learning a valuable lesson in losing. Shit, Pop's been learning that lesson the past few years. It's been 5 now, and he's forgot how to shout out. Oh, shout out to Justin. Hopefully you get some enchiladas before SeaWorld. That's it, baby. That's it. I'm going to go get some enchiladas after this. By the way, was kind of laughing the other day because I was driving home. When we went to LSU, I live in West Bear County, right? So basically the Petranco and Tally area. But I oftentimes get home going through Grossenbacher. So if you go 16 Highway 90 to Grossenbacher, you can kind of weave your way around, right? And as I was going through, I had my GPS on, and my GPS says Grossenbacher Road, yada, 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 yada. And it says turn left onto Marbach. I have been doing this drive almost daily for the last 5 years, 6 years that I've lived in this house. It has never been referred to as Marbach Road. So Marbach apparently extends all the way to the back of my subdivision. And I started laughing because, I make fun of Marbach because Jay High School and the rivalry with my Holmes Huskies and a lot of Spurs Twitters from Jay and they think that they're hardcore and all that stuff. Whatever. Okay. Whatever. But I found it to be funny that was the case. That I actually live off of Marbach now. So that gives me street cred, right? It has to give me street cred. Got a tip, $5. The Drew Show. Saying, when you were at Ken's when Pop fired, were you at Ken's when Pop fired Bob Hill? If so, what was Dan Cook's immediate take? It couldn't have been good. He should have called him on it. Well, let me think about that. I was at Ken's in 1998 God, it was right around that time. But to be honest with you, Drew, Dan Cook, his last few years there at Ken's, mailed it in, man. He might have been a legend back in the day, but the Dan that I knew was basically already retired but still collecting a check. I didn't know the hardcore Dan Cook that a lot of people knew. Dan was really nice to me. He and I would chat, and he would take my money. He'd always want to gamble for a dollar, for 50 cents. He'd always come up with games for me to gamble a quarter or a nickel or whatever. And I would say that on a daily basis, he'd take about $3 from me. But Dan was not a go-getter at that point in his career. Did he talk trash? He may have talked trash, but he wasn't going to do anything about it. So the Dan I knew was an old man who was just ending his career. I have a lot of fond memories of my days at KSAT back in the day. I was at KSAT working with Greg Simmons, Cordell Patrick, and David Sears. And when I was at Ken's, I worked in the news department, but oftentimes in sports, I'd work with a very young guy named Joe Reinagel. So I knew Reinagel when he was young over there. I was Steve Spreester's first editor at KSAT. I'll tell you my story about KSAT. So I had this girlfriend named Amy, and Amy was my first love. And one day, she gathered all of my. I was writing for the Express News in the entertainment department, even though I was a teenager. They have like a section there for teens. And she was gathering all of my articles, and she put together a portfolio. She mailed that portfolio to KSAT and attentioned it to Greg Simmons. Greg Simmons called my house. I was 15 or 16 years old. I think it was 15. And, my mom answers the phone, says that the phone's for me, and I'm thinking it's one of my friends or whatever the case may be. We had those 30-foot cords that could extend to 2 different rooms, right? So I grabbed the phone, and he goes, "Hey, I'm looking for Michael. This is Greg Simmons from KSAT 12." And I had my jaw drop. And he was like, "Hey, Michael, someone mailed in a journal of like your articles." He goes, "I'm going through them." He goes, "You write very well. I see that you're the sports editor for your high school paper, and I see that you do some freelance for the Express News. Would you like to see what the sports department looks like here at KSAT?" And I went to KSAT, and they brought me in the back door because I wasn't allowed to be there because I had to be 18, but I was only like 15 or 16. And the sports department essentially adopted me. And there's Cordell Patrick, David Sears, all of those guys. And man, they put me to work. It didn't matter if it was high school football or go to the Spurs and do post-game interviews or go to a shoot around or whatever the case may be. Man, I was living it up. Wasn't making a dime because I was a full 40-hour, 50-hour-a-week intern making nothing, but I was getting the experience. And when it came time that there was a news editor position open and they said that they recommended me for it, that's when KSAT realized that I was underage. But they hired me anyways. I got hired as an editor at age 19, and then I became a news producer over at Ken's. Then I became a news reporter and a sports reporter elsewhere. Corpus Christi, then back at KBB. That is my whole turn over there. But working at Ken's was fun. It's funny because KSAT was my home, but Ken's, I have an affinity for both stations, and I worked at KBB for 5 years. So you add it all up, I was at Ken's for 3, KSAT for 5, and KBB for 5. But the guys that were at KBB, they're not there anymore, except for like Chuck McIntyre. So I don't really have like a desire to go back and visit them. But I love seeing my old friends at Ken's and KSAT. It's very cool. The intern that I interned with over there, Mario Orellana, is now the news director over at KSAT, which is pretty cool. But Dan Cook, the stories about Dan Cook are things of legend, and that was before my time. But I have a lot of respect for him, and back in the day, working with Chris Maru, working with Albert Flores and all those guys, working with, I worked with Ursula Perry when she first started at KSAT. So it's been a fun ride. It's been a fun ride. But we were talking a lot about the Cowboys. Again, the Cowboy fans, look at tonight's game. Eagles are by 3.5 points. If the Seahawks can somehow win this game, well, then it's game on for the Cowboys. But if the Eagles win this game, uphill climb. It's been fun. My name is Mike Jimenez. Joe Garcia, hopefully beginning of the year, we'll be doing this show together. I like it better when it's a dynamic of a back and forth, but we'll be doing that. I'm going to head out to SeaWorld because my kid wants to go, and it is Christmas break, so I'm going to go check that out. Everyone have a great day today. Be safe and reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at MJ Acquired Taste. And don't forget, Thursday is the watch party over at Bad Packer Brewery. Fantasy Gods watch party of Thursday Night Football. You've got the Rams taking on the Saints at SoFi. I'll be there. Come hang out. Flag me down. I'll get you a beer. I'll talk to you guys soon.